Have you ever wondered what therapists really talk about when they're off the clock? Are you looking to embrace open discussions about mental health while also laughing and relating to real content? Well, if so, you found the right place. Welcome to Unfiltered Therapists, a Kindred Roots Therapy Inc. podcast where the world of therapy meets candid conversations. Our podcast is tailor made for those who are ready to navigate life's challenges with humor, authenticity, and a dash of therapy wisdom. Our mission is very clear here to make therapy accessible and inviting. We want you to feel like you're part of our circle, relating to our discussions and finding nuggets of insight that resonate directly with you. Whether it's conquering anxiety, embracing self acceptance, discovering the latest therapeutic approaches, or just wanting to listen to other people bitch about their moms, we've got you covered. Join us as we kick back, shoot the shit, because believe it or not, us therapists do that too, and explore the depths of mental health, the human experience, and the overall road to wellness. We'll be here to answer your questions, discuss the topics you're most curious about, and create an atmosphere that feels like sitting on a cozy couch, chatting with your friends. If you're ready to laugh, not in agreement, and feel like you're part of a supportive community, hit the subscribe button and get ready for unfiltered conversations. This is Unfiltered Therapists, and we're about to break barriers, embrace growth, and invite you to join in this journey of true, authentic self-discovery. Let's do this. Okay. Hi, Kayla.
Hello.
For anyone who has ever done anything remotely technological, you will understand that this took way longer to get set up than it should have already. So that's how the day's starting. But I apologize if you're listening to this and the audio sounds a little funky on my side. I'm using the not great mic so we can make this work. But we want to make the time happen. And as long as you can hear Kayla clearly, that's what I actually care about. So let's go with that. So, Kayla, I'm actually going to open the room for you to speak a lot more about yourself and your experience. I think it's really important for people to hear it from you. But Kayla Huszar is a therapist located in central Alberta. So, for any of you folks that are wondering what that looks like, anywhere between Calgary and Edmonton, we're going to call central Alberta. And does a lot of work in the fair play realm, working with really fucking exhausted moms. And Kayla actually reached out to me after I released the last podcast with Zach as a guest and was like, hey, I basically do the same style of work, but from the perspective of moms instead of dads. And so let's have a conversation. So without further ado, Kayla, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Okay. Tell us about you. Tell us more about you.
Okay. So, you know how women, but when they become mothers, it just adds so many more layers, are just expected to do all of these things in life. There's just you're the caregiver, you're the nurturer, you're the doer, you're the person who, gets the birthday cards and the Mother's Day gifts. And it's all up here, right? You're always doing the mental math on whose birthday is coming up or what celebration or whose anniversary, and all of that mental load, which doesn't even touch the surface of what people are actually experiencing, is crippling. And my clients come to me mostly with the dialogue of I'm drowning. All of this weight is on my shoulders. And I don't actually know any other way, because all of the women in my genetic line or my caregivers showed me this path, or I witnessed this path, but I actually don't know how to exist within it because I'm exhausted and the world is different now. And so while that wasn't about me, that is where I lead with my work. And so I'm a registered social worker with training in expressive arts therapy. I'm a fair play facilitator, and I have my perinatal mental health certificate from Postpartum International for those who care about the initials and things.
The letters, all the letters.
The letters. Those are what the letters mean.
So true. Oh my gosh. Kayla, I feel like a big question that came especially after the last podcast, is what the fuck is fair play? Like, what is fair play? What is this method? Like, what are people talking about? So can you start by taking us through like what that even means and what it is?
Yes. So fair play is one system in how you can implement a system into your home for a better or a different division of labor. It is, to get really like breadcrumbs about it, it's really about who does what and when, so that your household moves forward, and so that the domestic stuff, the outside of the house stuff, your hobbies, your leisure, the things that light you up are important and prioritized by both people in the home.
Okay. How I feel like for a lot of people, this sounds like idealistic. It sounds euphoric. Like, wow, what a concept. Like what, so I guess, how did you find this method and what are some of the core principles that people can use to understand this method or introduce it without it being something that, if someone's really interested and wants to like invest in, meeting you, for instance, like what does this look like?
So my journey with it actually started with reading Eve Rodsky's Unicorn Space, which is all about how to define what self-care is and what is outside of self-care. Like, what are the things that make you feel alive? And the book is written from the context of more, how do you add like creativity or your unicorn space? For some people that's running, for some, like whatever they define that is as. So I started there, and then there's a couple like mentions of like, but if you haven't read Fair Play, some of these things aren't going to make sense, or you're not going to be able to implement them, right?
Gotcha.
Because you actually need the system in order to get to the place where you're like actually doing the fun things, because you can't actually get to the fun things without having the system and the partner. Or even if you live on your own, like how do you systematize your house so that you can actually get to the fun thing?
Yes.
Which is a whole problem in the way that we view our lives in the first place, that we have to do all the non-fun shit before we get to the fun shit.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
So that's where my like journey with it started. And while I'm like familiar with some of the context, like full disclosure, I haven't memorized, some of them. And so I think the two things that stick out for me the most when I'm talking to clients or starting the conversation, even just with humans in my life, is like time is created equal. Both of you, like you and your partner, have the same 24 hours in the day. And how we spend those 24 hours are absolutely informed by our lives, the messages, the stories, where we are in life, the things that we have privilege to and the things that we don't have privilege to. And so when I say time is created equal, I don't mean like the single mom who has to ride the bus to work every day. Like, her time is very different than someone's time who is in an equal partnership in a financial secure place. Like, so when I say time is created equal, I don't mean that like we all have the same opportunities of time. I mean, like, we all have the same 24 hours, and outside of the non-negotiables in life, work, caregiving, going to the bathroom and showering,
Yeah.
the time outside of that is equal between partners, right? So if the kids, let's say, for example, if the kids are in bed by 8:00 and you each have whatever bedtime you want to get to, right? Your own personal bedtime. And you might have 2 or 3 hours at the end of the day. How you spend that time in that window should be more equal or balanced.
What do you think is the reason that there is such like a disruption in that being the status quo?
I think that there has been a lot of generational learning around who is the caregiver and who is not the caregiver, who is the person who wipes the pubes off the toilet and the person who doesn't.
Yes.
Like,
oh my gosh, the
and
actress comment.
and so it's like, why does this default to women? And I think more importantly, when I can have an established relationship with someone, we get into the question of, why did I assume that role?
Yes.
Why was it mine? Why did I think that if I didn't do it, nobody else was going to do it? Like, where did that message come from?
Mm.
Because when I can get into this work with clients, most of what happens when they are in a healthy, collaborative relationship, I want to make that clear. When it's not healthy, not collaborative, teetering on abuse, or full on in an abusive state, that looks very different, and we need to have different conversations about that.
Yeah.
But let's assume that we have a healthy collaborative relationship in a therapy. When I'm sitting in front of one half of that relationship, what ends up happening is they tell me it's not like my partner would say no to me, or it's not like he's not willing to do it, or it's not like he doesn't do it when I ask. So there's this layers of things that are happening. I think it's the generational gendered learning that we all participate in. I think it's that women have been taught for a long time that if they don't do it, nobody else will do it. And that it takes vulnerability and some like grit and some straightforward, frank conversations to actually get to the place where that division actually starts making a little bit more sense for both people.
Yes. I love that you brought up vulnerability, because I feel like, historically speaking, when we would talk about division of labor in a household, and it was about like how to tell your partner that you feel like you're carrying more mental load, that the automatic assumption is that that's going to be like a heated or contentious or angry conversation. Like, I'm going to have to fight to get
Yes.
my time. And realizing that a difficult conversation doesn't mean it's an angry one, but the type of difficult conversation that is warranted is a vulnerable one, where you can explicitly say what it is that is impacting you and how it is impacting you, and leave space for your partner to show up for you in the way that you likely chose them for, because they are someone who could show up for you in that way in the first place.
Yeah.
And not be then dictating how they show up, because isn't that still a mental load? And I think that, for a lot of women, and I say women because this is just historically speaking what we see for these types of reasons, the argument that I often get from people is like, but delegating is just as exhausting as just doing it myself. And so how do you find that like that bridge gets crossed for people between understanding that this isn't delegating, but it's shared responsibility?
Yeah. And so there is a concept in the fair play system that is the minimum standard of care. And so let's use the bathroom example. So if the minimum standard of care is that the bathroom needs to be cleaned once a week, every second week, once a month, like whatever the standard is, when when the primary person offloads that to the person who's maybe never done it before, is that you actually have to walk them through it like they've never done it before. And so it is mental load, and it is like keeping the CEO hat on for like one more week, maybe even one more month of managing this one task. However, it's an interesting flip. For example, if my husband and this is a gendered conversation that I'm about to share with people. If my husband said to me, I want you to go outside and change the tires on the vehicle, without actually telling me how to do that, I could figure it out. I'm a smart human being. But without knowing where the tools are, how often do I have to do this task? Where are the tires? Like maybe I actually don't even know where the tires are.
Right.
If my husband says to me, this is really heavy for me and I need you to take it on now. I would be like, I, I don't actually even know where to start with this task. So
Right.
that's where the vulnerability piece comes in. And I 150 million% understand how ridiculous it is that you even have to walk them through step by step where the toilet paper is, where the cleaner is, how to do it, how to clean a toilet. And I'm not saying that you're going to need to show them how to clean a toilet, but
Sure.
let's just say for fun's sake, like you're going to have to show them the entire process. For a minute, for a hot minute, you're going to be so freaking mad that you even have to have this conversation. Like you should just know where the bathroom cleaner is because we've been living together for X number of years, or like you've been using a bathroom for your entire life. So you should just know. But the reality is, and the vulnerability is that if they've never done the task, whoever they is, whether it's your partner or your roommate or the jerk off at work who never cleans up the donuts on the coffee tray and you are always having to do it.
Mm.
Whatever the scenario is, if they've never had to do it, they actually probably don't know how to do it.
Right. Yes.
And there's vulnerability in saying, and a little bit of like relationship problem solving in the like, literally, this is where I store the bathroom cleaner. This is how often I clean the bathroom. This is the special stuff that we have to use on the shower so that the scum actually gets off the shower.
Mm.
And so for a minute, you're going to be so mad that you even have to do this. You're going to wonder why you even chose this person to live with, to work with, whatever. But after that, there's like that bridge. I like that metaphor of like the bridge. Once you're across the bridge and on the other side, you don't have to go backwards again. You actually
Right.
don't have to like cross it the other direction. You get to live on this side and never have to clean the bathroom again.
Right. Right. I wonder, okay, so this is like, and I don't know if this is a common thing. Even preparing to have this conversation because I think you know this, but like I don't have kids yet. And my husband and I am often very transparent about the fun conversations that we have in navigating these types of conversations. And in preparing for this and talking to even a couple people on my team who are parents and saying like, explain to me what your understanding is of fair play method, for instance. One of the criticisms that I've been given is that it feels very blamey. It feels like you owe me this, like a sense of like almost like entitlement, or like I do everything and you do nothing. And like this sense of feeling like it can come off in the early days of it feeling like, I don't know how, do you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like kind of like the like ultra problematic level side of like, you owe me this now.
Yes.
And like you did this to me. So like, how would you respond to that?
Oh, in a therapy setting, when I have an established relationship with someone, and I think it would be different if I was working in front of a couple or in front of the individual
Yes.
bringing the gripe to me, right? So I'm going to answer the question assuming that I'm only working with the female part of the couple.
Perfect. Yeah.
What I would be most curious about in where that resentment and silent seething is coming from is where, when, or how did the internalized message that I have to do everything came into the relationship? Because while I have been in that place where I do everything and you do nothing, and that rampant, really unhealthy story can take over, the reality of some of that, again, in the context of a healthy relationship, is that the person in front of me is actually choosing to participate in it. And that's a really uncomfortable, radical self-responsibility moment where you actually don't have to take out the garbage. You actually don't have to clean the bathroom. every week. You don't have to vacuum every day. And I'm only speaking about the domestic tasks
Totally.
of this. By participating in the doing, that's actually a choice, even though it feels
Mm-hmm.
like an obligation or something that's put on you, because you notice it different, or and so it's really tricky in a one-on-one situation, because I would gauge every relationship differently,
Right.
but eventually that's where I would want them to have some unlearning of their own participation in it.
I think that's huge. I think something that just went through my mind was like around the idea that it's not about you owe me doing the dishes, the
Mm-hmm.
garbage, you owe me doing more. It's like the type of relationship that I desire is a relationship where we are true partners
Mm-hmm.
in the life that we create together.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that partnership looks like, that it feels like both parties are heard and seen and supported, like, and how that doesn't sound blamey. It sounds like the dynamic of the partnership that we've created has shifted to be problematic. And I feel like collectively we can do a better job of this,
Mm-hmm.
is a way of maybe seeing it less like you owe me these things. That's not
Mm-hmm.
entitlement as much as it's like my desire for what I want is off.
Yeah. And I think when we get into the you owe me territory, it has likely been a very long time in the unbalance of that. And I mean, I could talk probably for another 2 hours about how the patriarchy and capitalism sets up women to be the default,
Right.
especially in early parenthood, because you are doing all of the math on all of the things that need to be done. And also, those conversations are happening in circles of women. They're happening when you're at work. Oh, have you gotten a stroller? Oh, my friend just got this. They just got this daycare, or whatever. Those
Right.
conversations are happening in circles of women. They're not happening in circles of men.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Like the men
So,
at work traditionally
yes.
are not standing around at coffee time asking other men about what stroller they bought, or what kind of bottles their baby is needing, or what their nap schedule is, or how much sleep they got last night.
Right. So so here's an interesting question then. Let's say for someone like myself who projects that I would like to be a parent one day and projects that I would like to prepare for that in the best possible way.
Yeah.
How would you advise people like me who are like, I want to be a parent, but I'm scared shitless that I'm going to end up in the same cycle of what I witnessed my entire life, and I don't want to do that? Like, how do I prevent what the fuck do I do to stop this before it happens? Like, where do we start?
Yes. Yes. And like, this is a conversation that I have had many times. And honestly, I think you start now.
Mm,
You start divvying up roles, responsibilities, prioritizing your times, like protecting your time, getting your partner, whether that's in a same sex or a heteronormative relationship. You start actually, this is going to sound kind of weird. You actually start letting them.
I love that.
You start letting them make supper, clean the bathroom, get the groceries, manage when the insurance and the phone bills need to be paid, if those are the things that are currently on your plate. And you start to get them, whoever they are, used to those tasks before you're also exhausted and knee deep in diapers and like haven't slept in potentially days.
Right. Yeah. I wonder, actually, this came up randomly this morning in a conversation here at our office around breastfeeding and how breastfeeding is one of the leading factors that has women feeling like they have a lot more to take on, because if they are breastfeeding, their partners can't help in that capacity right out
Yeah.
of early uh postnatal care, and how it starts to like set a pattern up of
Mhm.
feeling like mom's the one that has to be around to do everything because mom's the one that can feed, and especially when
Mhm.
babies are little babies, they eat all the time. So I guess, is there anything formal that you ever used or thought of to like in that sort of capacity help offset some of that feeling before it gets problematic?
Absolutely. So my kind of go-to statement that I use with all of my clients is that your partner can do everything that you can do except feed the baby in that example.
Yes.
And so they can bring you food, they can fill up your water bottle, they can make sure that your snacks are stocked for the day wherever your little nursing station is. Um, they can order you lunch and have it delivered.
Mhm.
They can order groceries and have them delivered. They can organize childcare if that's what it looks like a date night childcare, or
Totally.
they could inquire with a postpartum doula. Like, and here's the thing, the like asterisk PSA to all of this is biologically, genetically, your partner is likely not going to be thinking about the things that you are thinking as the person who's giving birth or gesting the baby or holding the baby.
Right.
And so, truthfully, I don't think I've ever met a couple whose partner was deliberately not supporting the other partner.
Mm. Mm.
It was a lack of communication or a lack of involvement. And I'm going to expand on that, as in the pregnant person has been doing all of this. They've been doing all of this research silently and invisibly. And so their partner actually has no concept of what the birthing person has been doing. All of the things that they have been setting up, all of the things they've been researching, all of the best products, all of the best things. The other partner, without a direct line of communication, literally has no idea.
Yes.
And I don't say that to upset anyone's version. For some people, they might actually find comfort in that. They actually might find comfort in the fact that I am doing this and I love doing it and I want to prepare for my baby and I don't want to take that away from anybody. The part that I see when people end up in front of me on Zoom or in my office is that they are drowning in all of it because they could carry it, they chose to carry it, and then they can't anymore. And so when it directly comes to breastfeeding and feeding a baby, regardless of the way that you choose it, is an 8-hour a day job,
Yes.
whether it's attached to you or you are preparing the bottles, sanitizing the bottles, getting the water ready, making sure that your power doesn't go out. Like, all of those things are part of feeding.
Right.
And so when we think about the way that society sets up birthing people, especially if they are choosing to breastfeed or chest feed, is that they then assume, they don't do it consciously or intentionally, but they assume that all of the childcare responsibilities are on them. And it's bullshit and it's unfair and all of the layers of all of the things.
Yeah.
But I would say if someone is like there right now, like if you're listening to this and you are preconception, trying to conceive, or gestating and or in those early days of postpartum, is to have the conversation. Actually, no, one step before that, invite your partner into a conversation so that you can bring some humanity into the conversation and say, man, like, I am really struggling with this. And check the the thought, the thing that's going through your mind, the story, the whatever, that it's not always going to end horribly.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the most generous possibility that could happen is that your partner is with you for a reason
Hmm.
and they love you, and likely with some transparency and vulnerability and some giving the benefit of the doubt, you can create more cohesiveness in your relationship, whatever that looks like, whether it's walking the dog or taking the garbage out or cleaning the pubes off the bathroom floor.
Yes. I often think like sometimes these conversations, I think sometimes the apprehension, whether it be around domestic duties of children or just shared household duties or like
Yes.
life day-to-day things, is like in having a conversation, it can feel like it can be emasculating to like tell someone that you're doing
Yes.
this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. Where like I think it's not about emasculating, but it's about empowering your partner. And that's why I loved when you just reframed that to say invite your partner into a conversation versus start or have a conversation, because it's empowering to invite your partner to show up as a partner.
Mhm.
And often what I think is so interesting in relationships, no matter same sex, poly, heteronormative, any relationship, is we are initially attracted to someone for certain qualities that we are seeking in partners. And then we end up in relationships. And I truly do believe that it has a lot to do with, like generations of understandings of what normal relationships look like or what people's normal responsibilities are. And we start almost like breaking people down for the things that we once loved about them to make it easier for them to play the part in the story of what we foresee to be the right answer. And then when they lose the qualities that we were attracted to, we're angry at them for losing the qualities that we were once attracted to. And, you used to show up for me. You don't show up for me anymore. And they're like,
We
well, when
don't
I
go on dates
for you,
anymore.
right.
Yeah.
Like, well, when I tried, you said you were tired. You didn't have time. I tried to have sex and you always told me you didn't want to have sex. So I stopped trying. And now you're like, you never try and like wine and dine me anymore. Like we get so like backtracked. And it's like when we start to realize that we need to empower our partners to be the version of them that we saw and loved so deeply, they show up again. Like there's a
They
reason
do.
that we knew they could show up. That's why we invited them into our lives. And I think for partners, because I can imagine this is actually going to be a good segue to one of my questions, was like, I can imagine that for a lot of partners to be like, hey, I would like to have a conversation about mental load or like domestic division of labor, that they're like, here we go. Like,
They go again.
about to lay it on me and blame me and blah, 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 blah. How often does a partner respond differently than, let's say, like the partner who invited these conversations expected them to? Or how often is it exactly what that partner expected and there's a lot of resistance? Like what kind of trends do you see there?
I see here's what I see. If I have been seeing someone for a period of time, and the period of time doesn't always matter, but if we have been doing the personal work and the emotional regulation and the story stopping and the prioritizing of the self outside of the relationship, just like as a human, I have needs and desires and I need to process some of that stuff. When I have been working with a person for a while, or they have had other coaching or other kinds of things, that conversation tends to go smoother.
Yes.
When it's out of the blue and angry and full of story and resentment and expectations and almost like some people have described it as like kind of a hate, like and they're drowning. They're so desperate for somebody to take something on that I know where it's coming from. I absolutely know where it started, and it started like way back there. It didn't start yesterday.
Right.
It didn't start when you guys birthed a baby. It didn't start when you got pregnant, like depending the length of the relationship.
Right.
The patterns for this, because we're creatures of habit, we are informed by gendered conditioning. Those patterns, like, they started a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, does the conversation always go according to plan? Not always. But is there ever a flat out no? I've never experienced that.
Hmm.
I've never had a client come back to me and say, my partner said no, and we're getting a divorce because I can't do it anymore.
Right.
It can be long, and it can take several times. It's like setting a boundary with your intrusive mother-in-law or Aunt Brenda who can't shut up at Thanksgiving. Like, it takes many times. And I'll share a funny story because I've witnessed it from both sides. So in the middle of the pandemic, my husband was laid off and my baby was 8 months old, and one of us had to go back to work. And so I went back to work because he was laid off. There wasn't an opportunity there. And I only came home to feed because there was a whole other breastfeeding issue. He would never take a bottle, and it was a whole other mental load. But so I would like come home to feed him, and my husband would do everything else. He cooked, he cleaned, he did the laundry, he napped, like he got the nap schedule down, he did all the things. And what was interesting? I didn't do laundry for 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, this is how this happens. This is how this so easily happens, is that I'm the one working outside of the home and I'm literally living the invisible labor. I've done it. I've done it twice. I know how hard it is. And yet I still participated in it like the man would,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
came home and I was exhausted and I was like, what are we having for supper? What is your plan? Do I have clean underwear for tomorrow? Please tell me that I have clean underwear for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so it was this really interesting experience that we both had, because I was like, oh, you really don't know what I do in the day.
Right.
Like, you actually don't.
Right.
Because I just literally did that same thing to you, and it didn't take very long. It literally only took 2 weeks for me to forget.
Lose it. Yeah. And you know what? Thank you for sharing that, because full ownership, I mean, I see this all the time in my own household, where it's often the reverse story of what we expect to be the gendered story, where, I'm a self-proclaimed I call it a need to recover workaholic is what we're going to call it. Because I'm pre-contemplative, but that's where we are. And I work a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm rarely home, and I'm constantly, I can tell myself a story about why I don't have time to do anything at home. And so oftentimes what would happen is, yes, I'd come home and it'd be like, what's for dinner? Why didn't you pick up more dog food? Why is there still a garbage can in the bathroom that's overflowing? Like, you couldn't empty it. And then I'm like, whoa, I am like being blamey right now, because I am pointing fingers at things, and I don't know what happened in between me leaving and coming back. And it's almost like a lack of object permanence. It's like it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, we just don't see it anymore. So we just think like a magical fairy is solving all of these problems. And it's so crazy, because we only notice what's not working, not what is. And it's really hard to remember to give positive reinforcement when things are going really well. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the answer is, okay, well, in order for me to correct course, I need to come home and cook dinner and make sure there's groceries and do this. That's not the answer. The answer is, I need to leave space to have a conversation to say, I recognize where I'm dropping the ball, and I feel like there's something that I'm missing here. Let's have a conversation about what's working for us right now and what's not working for us right now, and get back on the same page. And I agree that this is going to be an interesting plight of the modern day woman, because I think there's a lot of dispute here, because it is very hard nowadays for people to afford to have one partner who stays home. And so this traditional understanding of one person's responsible for financial matters and one person's responsible for domestic matters, I don't know many households where that truly exists anymore.
And it's a very new concept.
Yes.
Even, I'm going to say 40 years ago, gender roles were very clear. I go to work, whoever that partner is, I go to work, and you stay home until the kids get to kindergarten. That's just like,
Right.
that just what happens. And it was like, they're actually probably one of those silent knowings of like,
Yes.
that's just what we do.
Yeah. This is just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I find it really funny because obviously my husband's a firefighter, so he works shift work. And then I make my own schedule with this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so people often say, you're going to have such a hard time when you have to go on mat leave one day. And I'm like, I don't intend to go on a full mat leave one day.
Mm-hmm.
I intend to be able to work when my husband's home and
Mm-hmm.
stay home when my husband's working and make it work. And people
Yeah.
are flabbergasted at this. Like, and I'm like, are you guys serious? Y'all seriously like didn't see this coming? Like, but it's crazy because even when people know that you're like not doing the same storyline, as soon as there's kids involved, everyone assumes that like, well, there it goes, back to basics.
Back to gender roles.
Right.
What are you going to do? Fit in the box.
Stay-home parent? Like, oh my God, that's terrible news. And it's fascinating because even the people who you would least expect to impose that type of expectation will. And I don't even think we recognize when we're doing it. I think it's just so innate that we just do it.
So normal. Like, it's so typical of our brains to associate that as women's work or men's work. Right? Like, even I will text my friends on the first day of school and be like, how did school drop off go? And then I immediately am like, they might not be doing it. Yeah. This is very gendered of me. Right? Yes. But also, if I don't ask, it's like this, like,
do you want my support? Like, how did your day go regardless? Like, do you want to give me context? What was your day like? What did you do today? Like, but it's like these awkward, and I think that we like tiptoe on it because we're like scared of judgment from people. Yeah. And it's not until we have conversations about it and normalize it, like, no, this is fucking hard. Like, I don't know a single household, a single couple, a single family where anything ever happened easily. Like, there is always growing pains.
Always. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that this topic, if we zoom out from it, this topic isn't only hurting women.
No.
It's also hurting men. And I say that with the traditional gender roles in mind. But it's also hurting them, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a client come back to me, or experienced in my own life, their partner saying, I wish you would have told me. Like, you have been drowning in this, and I had no idea. And I would have shown up for you if I could have. And so while the premise and the formula and the system of fair play is written for women to understand and get the information around that automatic story, that gendered conversation that we're always having with ourselves. And I think if you do read it from a certain perspective, it can feel very blamey, and it can feel very, is this just my life now? Like, thank you for just like lifting the veil on all the things that I did think that I only experienced, but now it turns out all the women experience them. So, well, we're all just fucked. Like,
yeah, that's the end. Sorry.
The end. Done. But what I have seen on the other side of that, on the other side of the bridge, is marriages that last. Marriages that they don't need to escape from each other. Marriages where the children equally ask for mom and dad, depending, or this mom and this mom, or this dad and this dad. It's not just one. It's not just automatic that the default parent, whoever the primary parent was, normally the person who takes maternity, parental, or adoption leave, is because they did everything for 12 months, let's say, generosity in Canada, right?
Yeah.
That it's 12 to 18 months that you were home for 8 to 10 hours a day by yourself with an offspring that needs you. And I really liked what you said about object permanence, because that was exactly what happened to me. And it's like if they, the other partner, the not at home partner, literally doesn't see it.
No.
They don't know how many times you had to clean spit up. They don't know how many times you changed your clothes. And even without kids involved, they don't know that you walked the dog and got groceries, filled the freezer, rotated the freezer, pulled out all the towels and all the winter gear and washed them all today. They actually don't know.
No. No, they don't. And it's not anyone's fault.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a big one. It's like we're looking for fault or who points the finger, and
And who has the biggest finger? Also,
yeah, right. And I think that's where the vulnerability piece comes in. It's like there's ownership across the board.
Mm-hmm.
There's accountability across all sides of this, and it still feels unfair, and that's okay. But it's not anyone's fault. It's a lot of larger circumstantial system level issues, like you said. And might I just add, though I love all of our mental health counterparts, this is why I love social work so much as a therapy discipline, is because of this understanding of the larger societal issues, the system, the bigger picture.
The environment which you operate in is influenced by your humanness.
Right. We're a speck in the larger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't expect that it just comes naturally, but we also don't have to accept that it is what it is either. Like
exactly.
There's a give and take. And so I just think I am absolutely obsessed with how prevalent this conversation is. I am loving seeing it. I definitely can see where there's like that teetering point of being like, yeah, fuck men. And it's like, okay, no, relax,
right?
breathe.
Woo.
Like not thousandth answer, but like love that you're empowering yourself, but like let's like bring it back a second, right?
Yeah.
But like it's nice to see that it's becoming more normal to start breaking down that like perfect mom culture. I think that, I don't know about you, I've already, and again, I don't specialize in parenting, nor do I parent yet, but like the conversations around the trauma of like gentle parenting and like how parents now are owning this, thinking that they are terrible people or don't understand why their kids are, having these massive reactions to everything and then feeling like they're the only person to blame. And I just think we've gone through so many trends in the realm of family dynamics, parenting, development, and like, if any of them I've been like, oh, that's promising, it's this. It's like, why don't we just all work together and be partners and go back to basics? And like, if it's not working, maybe address it's not working and everyone just get back on the same page. Because, yeah, I think one of the biggest things is like that question I brought up earlier. And like you said, you've never seen someone explicitly just be like, nope, that's it, divorce, it's over. It is fascinating to me how often when someone actually practices vulnerability, doesn't have a conversation and say, I did it. No. Like, did you vulnerably share the truth of where you're at?
And again, and maybe again, and maybe again.
And again, yeah. How often partners are capable of showing up in the way that they are desired to without an instruction manual. They just need permission to be, let them do it. Let them do it. And it's crazy. It's such a flip. It's simple, not easy. This was one of my favorite sayings that came from a coaching program in right now. Simple, not easy. And I'm like, That's what we all try to remember. And I love that, there's people like yourself who are actually just owning and specializing in doing this. So with that being said, tell us how people can get a hold of you or like what you offer and where and how and all that stuff.
So right now I'm mainly virtual. So you can go to my website, Kayla Huszar, KaylaHuszar.com. I'm also Kayla.Huszar on Instagram. And I work, basically our first step, if anybody is interested, is we have a consult and then we have a 90-minute kind of intake session. And then we craft some goals or supports from there. And the process is, I like what you said. It's simple, but not always easy. And, really, if someone is in a place where they're contemplating therapy or coaching or any kind of self-development work, is that it's not as hard as you think it's going to be.
Love that. Isn't that the truth? Just get through the first session and you'll be
There's a first session. Yeah.
And it's addicting. Man, I think I'm so biased here, but tell me therapy's not addicting. It's so fun.
I said to my husband the other day, like, if I had to give up therapy, I don't know what I would do.
No.
Like, it's part of our budget. It's part of what we do. It's a rhythm. It's a bill, like my cell phone bill. It's built into my life, because when I don't have that unbiased person, whether it's a group or one-on-one, virtual or in person, whatever the thing is, I lose perspective. I lose context on what I'm experiencing, and I can get too into my head. And so anyone has ever been on the fence, like you weren't going to be that person. It should be as normal as going to the dentist, and as built into your life as paying your cell phone bill.
Yep.
It also costs about the same amount of money as your cell phone bill every month also.
And then you can do this thing called being happy or fulfilled. I don't know. It's a crazy concept.
You can create a life you don't want to escape from.
You could enjoy being at home, or know what makes you happy, or know why things feel off. It's nuts. I know, crazy concept, but we love it. So I will, in the write-up for this, put everything in the description to find Kayla on Instagram, on her website. Thank you so much for making the time for this. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for the work that you do, and you are welcome back anytime.